So we're in the midst of the tampering period where, of course, teams can negotiate with free agents.
The legal tampering period.
Tampering
because
period.
There's no other tampering going on.
Yeah, exactly. Wink, wink. So, Tom, we are ranking the free agents out there.
Yes.
And we're going to count you folks down from 25 all the way down to number 1. Let's start things off with one A.J. McCarron. Here he is at number 25, Tom. And look, I think there's going to be some sort of market for him. Obviously not a Kirk Cousins type of market.
There is a market.
There will be interest.
And I don't really know why. I don't think
I
don't think McCarron's that good. I think we've seen him play with a really good Bengals offense, and he was average. A.J. McCarron is this year's Mike Glennon. Go ahead and throw $16 million at him in an incentive, kind of front-loaded deal that doesn't have a whole lot of money if you end up cutting him, and then draft your quarterback as well, and then say, thanks, A.J. Bye, A.J. Thanks for the one-year stopgap, and then McCarron goes back to be a backup quarterback.
Well, what if he wins games, Tom?
Okay. That was the big thing about McCarron coming out of college. Oh, he's a winner. He played for Alabama.
He's a gamer.
If you're a loser quarterback for Alabama, you just must be terrible. So I get why McCarron, he's probably in that top 40 quarterback range. He can be a bridge starter for you, but he's not a franchise quarterback. With that said, I hope he proves me wrong.
Okay. All right. So
I like
A.J.
it when I'm
McCarron.
wrong, when I'm negative about players.
McCarron, by the way, fighting hard with the Cincinnati Bengals to be deemed an unrestricted free agent. That saga was interesting.
Hey, the Browns totally screwed the Bengals. The Bengals should have got a second and a third for A.J. McCarron. Instead, they didn't, and the Browns gave up less to get a better quarterback in Tyrod Taylor.
All right, so there's A.J. McCarron at number 25. Let's check in with number 24 now. This guy has been a busy man visiting the Packers, the Chiefs, the Saints. You got the Redskins as well. Muhammad Wilkerson, defensive lineman for the New York Jets. As we flash you at A.J. McCarron here at number 25, there is Muhammad Wilkerson there for the Jets. Can sign at any point because he was released by New York after a season that was full of bad PR, shall we say, Tom?
Just bad.
Yeah.
I think that's the best way to put it for Mo Wilkerson. And there are some character concerns, some ethic concerns around Wilkerson. If he's smart, there is one team in particular I think he should go play for, and that is the Green Bay Packers. Mike Pettine's there. If you want to actually kind of rehab your stock as a player and you want to go to a team that's not going to pay you a bunch of money, I love the fit for Green Bay. And I think if you give him on a cheaper contract, that actually makes some more sense for Mo Wilkerson and the Jets on that end. I think that's where he should go. I don't know if that's where he'll end up going. Teams like the Chiefs, the Saints, and Redskins have all scheduled or had visits with Mo Wilkerson. Of course, he can sign at any point. He doesn't have to wait for that tampering period to be over. So I like where we sit with Wilkerson and the Jets. I think that'd be a good fit in terms of going forward from the Jets to a new team. I just don't think he is an elite prospect by any means, and not the same guy the Jets gave all that money to as well.
Definitely not. Mo Wilkerson checking in at number 24. Let's go to number 23 now, to the secondary from Jacksonville. Aaron Colvin has been linked to the Packers, perhaps the Oakland Raiders as well. Still a shot that he returns to Jacksonville, Tom, but could be too expensive.
The key for Colvin is whether or not he gets a lot of money elsewhere, because the Jaguars cannot invest a soon forthcoming massive deal for Jalen Ramsey, perhaps the best cornerback in the NFL.
Sure.
They've already given a big one to A.J. Boye. You're not going to see him pay a lot of money then to a nickel corner as well. So I think on that end, you could see the Jags try and bring back Colvin, but I think that's a little bit more likely that a team with a lot of cap space says, you know what, we're just going to go ahead and throw some money at this nickel corner, solidify that spot, and then maybe go cheaper at like the number 2 corner as well. So I like Aaron Colvin a lot. Doesn't have the best ball skills in the NFL, only a couple pass breakups, but he's a strong tackler from the nickel spot. He can blitz as well. If you're looking for a nickel corner outside of Patrick Robinson, who we'll get to, I think Aaron Colvin is your best bet.
All right, he's there at number 23 in our free agency rankings. Let's go to the offensive side of the ball now, Tom. Number 22, Dion Lewis, running back of the New England Patriots. I think there's a pretty darn good chance he walks into free agency and tests the open market.
Look, we typically don't see the Patriots throw big money at halfbacks, and in reality, they picked James White. That was their, undersized, more versatile back that they chose. So I think they're going to end up keeping James White. Of course, they re-signed him earlier last year. I think they're going to let Dion Lewis walk. They'd love to bring him back, but only ATRP at the right price.
Yep.
I think you'll see teams like the Jets, and there's all teams that have been linked to Lewis as well. The Niners, if they want to have a guy that I think fits Shanahan's system very well. I think the Colts make sense, although I think there's some overlap there with Dion Lewis and Marlon Mack. I also think a team that makes a lot of sense and has already been linked to the team is the Tennessee Titans. I think a Dion Lewis, Derrick Henry tandem, if Lewis isn't overly expensive, is a really, really good 1-2 punch. Derrick Henry wears you down because he's a bit of a battering ram, although he's a good athlete as well. And then Dion Lewis on third downs is that scat back I think fits really well with Marcus Mariota. I'd love to see Lewis in Tennessee.
All right, you see the teams linked to Dion Lewis there as well. A lot of them could be in the hunt for Dion as we move throughout free agency. He's at number 22 in our rankings. Let's go to number 21 now. Back to the defensive side of the ball. Eric Reid, safety for the San Francisco 49ers. 49ers, I think, outside of Reid, are in still a solid position at the safety area, but perhaps Eric Reid could come back.
Well, you're the host of the 49ers Report, Cam, so what are your expectations around Eric Reid? Is he going to be back, or is he going to go try and get more money / playing time elsewhere?
Well, I think the 49ers are in no rush to bring him back. Number one, they have a lot of salary cap space, and they want to prioritize their spending in other areas, such as with an Allen Robinson or Andrew Norwell at guard. And you have Adrian Colbert, who had a really good season at safety that I think they can kind of build off of that. And they've also addressed the corner position now with Richard Sherman. Yeah. Perhaps Eric Reid is now a little expendable. Yeah. So that's kind of my thinking on Reid. And we really don't know the market too much about him.
Yeah, not a whole lot coming out yet. And it's an interesting market because Reid is one of the kneelers. How is that going to impact his market? I hope it doesn't have much of one, but we saw it impact Colin Kaepernick's market. Maybe something similar happens with Eric Reid, but he might be a guy you see has to wait a little bit for some other stuff to kind of work out. Maybe even he waits till after the draft potentially. I don't think that'll be the case, but you could see it happen if a team says, you know what, we like you, Eric, but a couple of teams say we're going to wait and see what happens at the draft. Maybe we want to get Derwin James instead. My guess is that doesn't happen, but I think you could see Reid wait a little bit longer than his talent level says he should.
And that's an interesting point, Tom. Do you think kneeling will actually have an impact on your free agency kind of stock?
Look, I think in reality, yes. There are NFL owners who will not sign players who do that. Okay. And you've seen some reports that indicate some owners say, yeah, we don't want him on our team, which I think is stupid because you let everyone else play, but I'm not going to get on a tangent there, but I do think it might have an impact, maybe not a big one, and certainly not as extreme as Colin Kaepernick's.
All right, so there's Eric Reid at number 21. Let's go to number 20 now, and to the offensive line we go. Weston Richburg, center for the Giants. Losing him would really hurt, especially on an offensive line that needs all the help it can get.
I don't know if he's going to be back.
Yeah.
I think you could see the Giants try and go cheap at center. We'll discuss Andrew Norwell later in the show. I think they're going to throw money at him, and if that's the case, you could see the Giants say, you know what, we don't have enough money for everyone. We're going to invest in our guard in Norwell, and then we're going to say, Weston, thank you so much. Maybe they keep someone like Brett Jones and try and get by with him at the center spot. If he does leave, the buzz going on around there in terms of around Richburg, I think the New York Jets is a perfect fit for Weston Richburg. They desperately, and I mean desperately, need a center. I don't know if there's a team, maybe the Cincinnati Bengals, that need a center more than the Jets. Wesley Johnson took over for Nick Mangold, was a disaster. Jonathan Harrison, not great. They need a new center. They got the cap space. I would not be surprised if you see Richburg switch jerseys. Maybe doesn't even have to move at all as he plays for the Jets instead of the Giants next year, potentially.
If he's in the lineup, he's a pretty darn good player.
Yes, when healthy. So. He can also play guard if needed as well.
Weston Richburg is at number 20 in our free agency rankings. As we move on to the teens now, number 19, back to the running back position, Carlos Hyde of the San Francisco 49ers. I think it's likely he moves on. You see a lot of interest out there from the Browns, the Buccaneers, maybe even the Raiders too. They've been looking into Doug Martin as well. What do we make of Carlos Hyde?
There are teams that need a running back, plain and simple. And would you rather sign a guy like Carlos Hyde, who, yes, has been hurt and hasn't reached 1,000 yards? Maybe you want to scat back in Dion Lewis. But you look at the guys that can be 3-down backs, Carlos Hyde, and in terms of free agents, Doug Martin, Isaiah Crowell, and Doug Martin was not good last year. So I think Hyde, in what is a poor running back market, is going to get the most interest. But as teams move more and more to a running back by committee setup, I don't know if that actually means you'll see him get a lot of money in the open market. Niners could try and let him leave, but I don't know if it makes the most sense in the end for a team like the 49ers to say, yeah, we're going to give money to Hyde when we have some other backs who fit. Maybe he waits a little bit. I think in the end he wants to get starting money, or at least have starting interest, and a team like the Bucs I think makes sense there. The Raiders, if they do move on from Marshawn Lynch, which I don't think is going to happen, I think that the Jets as well make sense. The Colts could be a fit as well with all of that cap space.
So we have a question for the folks watching the program right now. Would you rather draft a running back early or sign someone such as a Carlos Hyde, such as a Dion Lewis perhaps. I think it's an interesting point because, first of all, I don't think many running backs are going to go early in the draft per se other than Saquon Barkley. It depends on your definition of early.
Yeah. If we're talking if we're talking early first, second round, I'll probably cheat and say neither. Give me like 2 4th or 5th round backs and I'll be fine.
Sure.
Because I think you can get by with similar production and invest more in other key positions of the game. But I understand why you would want to spend a high pick. But you can also get a guy like Kareem Hunt. I think the ability to get a late round halfback is easier, emphasis on the easier because it's a relative term there, than getting a later round cornerback or edge rusher or even potentially like an outside tackle or something, offensive tackle. So I lean towards, going cheap at halfback, but in terms of a second round pick or Carlos Hyde, I think I'd still go second round pick because Hyde was a second round pick. You can get a cheaper version and still get similar production. And younger too, because the shelf of halfbacks is so short these days.
All right, let us know in the comments section, ladies and gentlemen, as you watch on Facebook Live and YouTube. Carlos Hyde is at number 19. Number 18, I like this kid a lot. Patrick Robinson, slot corner for the Philadelphia Eagles, one of the highly ranked corners according to Pro Football Focus. Number 6, in fact, Tom, the Eagles really want to try to bring him back. Not so sure if they can.
Well, if they do bring back Patrick Robinson, and we know Philadelphia is a very aggressive front office under Howie Roseman, if they do bring back Patrick Robinson, I think they're going to trade a cornerback because I think they like Jalen Mills. They traded for Ronald Darby, but they drafted Rasul Douglas. They drafted a guy in Sidney Jones. They have guys like Jalen Watkins, who I think they like. They can't extend Patrick Robinson and then say, yeah, we're going to keep all these guys. You can't have 5 guys or 4 guys who can play all those snaps. So maybe they try and trade a guy like Jalen Mills or Darby because I think they really like Sidney Jones. They like Rasul Douglas.
Darryl Worley coming over too.
Oh, exactly. I forgot about him. Yeah. So at that point, if they bring back Robinson, there's no way they keep all of those guys. So I think at that point, you could see that the Eagles move on from Robinson or trade someone else to keep Robinson, a really good nickel corner, one of the better ones in the NFL.
All right, it's been an up and down career for Patrick Robinson too, Tom.
Yes, inconsistent, but this year was great.
We've seen the peaks and valleys. Last year was certainly a peak for Patrick Robinson. He's at number 18. Let's go to number 17 now. Starr Lotulelei, been linked to the Panthers. We got the Dolphins, the Chiefs in the mix as well. Defensive tackle of Carolina.
Yeah, rough year for Starr. And we know he's a pretty talented player. He's not going to be a 10-sack guy, but he's a reliable defensive tackle. Had a very down year, but I think his previous years and his previous production is one that says, yeah, you know what, we're going to give this guy another shot. Maybe he doesn't get a massive Mo Wilkerson type deal, but I think in the end he'll get some money. Maybe it's not the big contract he would have liked to have had, 2 years ago. The Panthers drafted guys like Kawan Short and the kid from Utah, Vernon Butler. I don't think they'll bring him back, but I think they'll have some interest there. Maybe it's the Dolphins, who, as we've seen in the past, they're going to let go of Suh. They need more defensive line help. Maybe a guy like Starr fills that need. I think the Chiefs, the Bills, even the Texans make sense as well for Lotulelei.
All right, he checks in at number 17 in our free agency rankings. Let's get to number 16 now. Head to the tackle position. Nate Solder, not the greatest campaign in 2017. In fact, tends to be a little soft out there in pass protection. Number 34 ranked offensive tackle according to Pro Football Focus.
Look, here's the thing though, Cam. What other offensive tackles are there?
Supply and demand.
And I think this is why you saw the Bengals trade for Cordy Glenn. You can go throw a similar contract at Nate Solder in reality, or you can go trade for Cordy Glenn. Instead, I think that Solder has quite a bit of a, maybe not a full-on robust market, but it's a solid one. We know the Houston Texans are interested in him. We know the Patriots could want him back. Denver Broncos in the mix, although it might be a little bit too expensive. I don't know if Solder wants to move to right tackle either. One more team to monitor, Cam, when it comes to Nate Solder. The Cleveland Browns. If Joe Thomas doesn't come back, which is a possibility,
very much
all
so.
of a sudden, they need a left tackle. Good news is they've got all the cap space that they could possibly want. And at that point, I think it makes sense there. So keep an eye on the Houston Texans and on the Cleveland Browns, I think, as the two main options for teams that could end up getting Nate Solder. I don't know if he comes back to the Patriots. They did draft Antonio Garcia last year. I would not be surprised if he's on the move. Some of these players, as we get further into the top 15 and top 10, might not actually be on the move in the end.
All right, so that's the latest with Nate Solder. He checks in at number 16 in our free agency rankings. If you're just tuning into the program, let's summarize our list so far. 25 through 21, we got A.J. McCarron, Muhammad Wilkerson, Aaron Colvin, Dion Lewis, Eric Reid. And then 20 through 16 now, Weston Richburg, Carlos Hyde, Patrick Robinson, the fantastic slot corner, Starr Lotulelei, and Nate Solder checking in at number 16. You're watching NFL Daily, presented by the Game Time app, getting up to 60% off all those last-minute sports tickets, concert tickets, and theater tickets. Check them out, chatsports.com/tickets. Many thanks to them for sponsoring today.
It's the way to save money. I mentioned this earlier, but I was going to a Stars game, $20 for the tickets, and then Scalpers are charging $50. Yeah, easy. Go with the Game Time app, man. Chatsports.com/tickets.
Tom, I'm pretty sure here in Dallas we have some March Madness games as well.
Yes, we do.
So
I'm working.
For those who aren't working, hit up that app, Game Time. Many thanks to them for sponsoring here on NFL Daily. Let's continue along here in our free agency rankings. Into the top 15 we go. Getting to the cream of the crop, ladies and gentlemen. Back to the quarterback position, Sam Bradford. What do we make of him?
Well, the Bills are the one team that's maybe shown the most interest in Bradford at this point. Look, I wouldn't totally rule out the possibility, Cam, that Sam Bradford doesn't even play. Look, Mike Zimmer was very blunt in his assessments of his Vikings quarterbacks, and Bradford, he more or less said, and I'm paraphrasing here, yeah, his knee's really bad. I think it is a degenerative knee condition. I don't know if you're going to see Sam Bradford physically be able to play football for much longer, if at all. He's just taken such a beating, and he's had so many injuries at a certain point. It's just that, you know what? I can't do it anymore. And if he does play, I think the Bills make sense. I think other bridge quarterback options, like the Jets and the Cardinals, are the ideal fits for Bradford there.
You know, I put in my bold predictions on the Cam Rogers show, Tom, that Sam Bradford will sign with the Buffalo Bills. And it seems as though things are trending in that direction. I can't wait to revisit that list, by the way, and see how many I actually hit on.
Like 1,
yeah.
2?
Yeah, stay tuned on that
That's
one.
the point of a bold prediction, though.
By the way, the Jets drafting Josh Allen. We'll see if that one comes to fruition.
All right.
Sam Bradford is at 15. Let's go to 14 now. The defensive line, Dontari Poe, formerly or soon to be formerly of the Atlanta Falcons, although it's possible he could go back to them. But a lot of teams out there are in need of a defensive tackle like him.
I'm really curious what his market ends up being, because it wasn't as good as he wanted last year. And then that insult to injury, the Chiefs gave Benny Logan like the exact same deal that Poe got from the Falcons. So I don't know what happens to Poe. I know there are teams that need a defensive tackle. Teams like the Dolphins, the Colts have been tangentially linked so far. Maybe he just goes back to Atlanta. I think he liked playing there. He wasn't super disruptive necessarily. I think it could be a fit for him staying in Atlanta. He wants a long-term deal with big money. I don't know if he gets that, though, this offseason.
I agree. Yeah. So there's Dontari Poe at number 14. You see he was graded out as the 36th defensive lineman, according to Pro Football Focus. Let's go to number 13 now. We talked about one Giants offensive lineman. Let's stick with that theme. Justin Pugh this time is at number 13, offensive guard for the Giants. When he's healthy, he's one of the best at the position, but he wasn't healthy last year.
Yeah, he was banged up a lot, and it really affected his on-the-field play. And I think he did not do free agency right, Cam. You do free agency right by staying healthy, having your best year ever. Justin had a bad year and was hurt for a good portion of it, and that's not what you want to do for agency. But maybe he signs a one-year prove-it type deal. I think the Giants, if he ends up being cheaper, does make some sense. I will also, by the way, throw out the Jacksonville Jaguars.
It's a good play.
There's the Tom Coughlin collection. I think he's close with Doug Marrone from their time at Syracuse as well. I think it makes a lot of sense. Jacksonville needs a guard, and they still have some cap space left to be used, though they used quite a bit of it last year. So keep an eye on Jacksonville and Justin Puig. I think that is one of the best team player fits in free agency.
Maybe if the Indianapolis Colts miss out on Quentin Nelson, or they wouldn't miss out, but maybe they don't want to go with the Quentin Nelson direction.
They miss out on Andrew Norwell.
Yeah, sure. Justin Pugh can kind of be 1C in their options there. So Pugh is at number 13. Let's go to number 12. Vikings quarterback number 2, Teddy Bridgewater. What is the market with him? Because it could be backup, it could be starter.
I think his market is, all right, guys, who wants to let me compete for a starting job? Okay, it's 3 of you. Okay, who gives me the most money? Okay, I pick this team. I don't think you're going to see any team throw a lot of money at Teddy Bridgewater, because why would they? We really don't know what Teddy Two Gloves has left in him because of the nasty, terrible knee injury. I will say this, though. We've seen the Dolphins have some interest. I don't know if that makes a ton of sense because they still have Ryan Tannehill. I think it could be the Jets or the Cardinals potentially. If the Jets don't want to bring back Josh McCown, maybe they add Teddy Bridgewater, draft somebody, let them compete. I think of the quarterbacks we've mentioned, in terms of upside, Bridgewater has it, but his floor is just so low. I think he is going to be one of the last quarterbacks to sign as a quarterback whose best case scenario is, let me compete for a starting job, because I don't think any team wants to say, you know what, yeah, we trust Teddy Bridgewater right now, given that we saw him play, 6 snaps since 2015. Just doesn't make sense.
I am shocked, actually, that the Vikings, at least for now, have not shown interest in bringing this guy back.
It's because they want somebody else on this list.
Oh, geez.
That's a tease right there, folks.
We'll get there. Teddy Bridgewater is at number 12. Speaking of Vikings quarterbacks, here is another one, because why not? Case Keenum checks in at number 11, then linked to the Cardinals a little bit, perhaps Buffalo. A lot of teams out there that are interested in Case are also interested in Kirk Cousins as well.
I think the mindset for NFL teams is, okay, let's try and get Kirk Cousins. Let's get the
white whale.
The white whale, the surefire thing. If we can't get Kirk Cousins, let's get Case Keenum, have him be the best bridge quarterback, and then draft somebody as well. I think whatever team you see sign Case Keenum is not committing to him as a long-term starter, because Mike Zimmer summed it up best. Is it going to be the Keenum we got last year, or LA Rams Case Keenum?
Correct.
And my fear, maybe it's somewhere in the middle. Not as good as Minnesota, but got rid of the stench of Jeff Fisher. So I think one team in particular makes the most sense. Keep an eye on Denver. I think Denver's a good fit if you see them go ahead and miss out on Kirk Cousins. They can sign Case Keenum and then draft a Josh Allen or a Baker Mayfield, and that allows them to potentially sit that quarterback for a year, have Case Keenum try and compete right away while grooming that quarterback behind the scenes and in the training camp. Or, best case scenario, that quarterback turns out to be great and Keenum gets Mike Glennon.
Oh, no, you don't want to get Mike Glennon. I can't believe that's a verb now. Yeah. Case Keenum, you see the Bills there, you see the Broncos, you see the Cardinals, you see the Jets. You know what I think about Case Keenum. I think he goes to the Arizona Cardinals, but
Arizona will get A.J. McCarron and be terrible.
Which Vikings quarterback would you rather have? So pretend you're a GM, you got to make the decision, you got to figure out the personnel, you need a quarterback. Do you want Bradford, do you want Keenum, or do you want Bridgewater? Give us a heart, a wow face, and a laughing face, respectively, here on Facebook Live and on YouTube. If you're on YouTube, hit us up in the comments section. Tom, I'm forcing you to choose one. Where are you going?
Well, I was part of the Teddy Bridgewater hive when he came out, so I think I have to stick with Teddy here.
Okay.
He was quarterback 1 in that draft class. I don't care what anyone else tells me. Had he stayed healthy, he would have been fantastic. I'm so upset that he got hurt.
All right, so Case Keenum checks in at number 11 in our free agency rankings. Let's get inside the top 10. We have Sammy Watkins, wide receiver of the Rams. A lot of people thought maybe he would have gotten the franchise tag, but would have been more expensive than, say, a LaMarcus Joyner. So looks like Sammy's going to test the open market here, Tom. Look, I think there's a lot of untapped potential still with this kid. The
Rams want to bring back Sammy Watkins. I think he did a good job of drawing away attention from the rest of the receivers, but in the end, you got to do more than 39, 53, and 8. Now, ATDs is great, but the receptions and the yards, they're just not there. So you'll see Sammy Watkins have a very good market because of the potential and the flashes we've more or less seen. Sammy's never really put it all together in the way that a top 10, top 5 draft pick should be able to.
And I think we're still waiting.
And we are still waiting. I think we'll get it at some point if he's healthy, but all those teams have already shown interest in Sammy Watkins according to various reports out there. You know the Rams want to bring him back. The Packers, as we mentioned earlier, they are very aggressive right now when it comes to free agency. The Bears, of course, have a desperate need at wide receiver. The Chiefs have some interest if they want to help out Tyreek Hill. And then, of course, your Baltimore Ravens. But in the end, for Baltimore, this is an example of a team's eyes being bigger than their stomach in terms of food to cap space, because they just don't have enough room. They can't afford it. So I'm sorry.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that. I'm looking at a comment from Robert right now, and saying if Flacco restructured that huge contract and opened up cap space, we'd actually be able to go out and spend on a decent wide receiver at some point. Robert, from a Ravens fan to another, I absolutely understand what you are saying. So, nice job. I'm giving you a like to that one. Appreciate the comment.
Cam is still pro Flacco for some reason.
Hey, I am. There's Sammy Watkins checking in at number 10. Let's get to the single digits now. We'll stay with the Rams. Tremaine Johnson, cornerback. and not a great 2017. People just see the name Tremaine Johnson. They think, oh, great corner. Actually wasn't all that good last season.
Yeah, I don't know how ideal a fit he was for the Wade Phillips defense, although I don't put a whole lot of stock in that because if you can't play under Wade Phillips, concern. But look, I still like Tremaine Johnson. He's going to get a very good contract out on the open market, but it was a bit of a down year. Kind of true for all these corners outside of the nickel guys like Patrick Robinson and Aaron Colvin. But there have been multiple teams that have already been linked to Johnson in various reports. The Niners were among them. They were actually called the favorite at one point. Then they went on and signed Richard Sherman. So I don't know how likely that is now for the Niners to get Tremaine Johnson. The Cowboys were linked, but I still think, and I mentioned this in previous shows, that was more of a, hey, you know what? We would love to have Tremaine Johnson. We would like to get him. But that doesn't mean we're actually going to be able to try hard because we just don't have the cap space.
It's like a wish list on Amazon.com.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like
hey, I see that really expensive item.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
I'll think about it.
I think the Raiders are the front runner right now because the Bay Area, I think that's where Johnson was going to end up. But they have cut Sean Smith, who, by the way, is going to serve a year in jail for an assault. They've already cut David Amerson. They've got T.J. Carey and a bit of a question mark with Garyon Conley. They need another cornerback. I think Johnson makes a ton of sense there. The Packers have shown interest because they're now very aggressive all of a sudden. Mm-hmm. Don't rule out, by the way, the Cleveland Browns. There was already a report that Demarius Randall was not going to be a corner for them. He's going to go play free safety, which he did do some at Arizona State. If that's the case, former Rams DC Greg Williams is still in Cleveland. They need another cornerback there. I like the fit of Johnson and the Browns if they can beat out a team like the Oakland Raiders.
All right, so Tremaine Johnson had a big fat contract last season, by the way, too, so may have to take a little less money. Did get franchise tag. He's at number 9. Let's go to number 8 now, the wide receiver position. We talked a little bit about him in the early part of our show. Allen Robinson essentially missed the entire 2017 season with a torn ACL. Was not franchise tagged by the Jaguars. A lot of people thought they would franchise tag him, but they didn't.
Yeah, I get it, but I'm also kind of like, you restructured the contract for Blake Bortles to save you money by extending him. In reality, that's what they were focused on, having another guy for another 2 years and kind of redo the deal. And you let Robinson hit the open market and Marquise Lee. Like, if I'm Jacksonville, all of a sudden I'm like, there is a chance we lose our 2 best receivers.
Yeah.
I know some younger guys like Keelan Cole and Jaden Mickens stepped up, but Robinson is a guy we've seen be a wide receiver 1, especially when he's been healthy. So, Cam, I'll start with the 49ers. Do they make sense? They did extend Marquise Goodwin, and they still have Pierre Garçon as well.
Well, they got Trent Taylor at the slot position well. So 3 really solid wide receivers, and a lot of 49ers fans out there like to point that wide receiver is a big need. I wouldn't say it's as big of a need as, say, the guard position where perhaps they could go out and try to grab Andrew Norwell.
Agreed.
I think it makes sense if the 49ers bring in Allen Robinson. I think obviously it'd be a fantastic fit for Jimmy Garoppolo, but Marquise Goodwin's a good player. So is Pierre Garçon.
Yeah.
And Trent Taylor has a very bright future ahead of him. Maybe not so much the priority, but the reports suggest 49ers and Bears are going to get into some sort of bidding war here.
And this is why I would have franchise tagged him, because if you're the Chicago Bears, you have to get help from Mitchell Trubisky. Why not a guy like Allen Robinson, who's big, can make all the contested catches in the world? I think he'd be a good fit in Chicago. And Jacksonville now, I think, is legitimately running the risk of losing Allen Robinson, which I think would really hurt that offense. Even though you didn't have him last year, your offense wasn't what you would have liked it to be in terms of the peakness, and you got to think that there's going to be some regression on that end because I don't know if the defense is going to be quite as good. It's going to be great again, but you want to avoid potential areas for regression, and not having Allen Robinson, I think, sets you up for that. So if I'm Jacksonville, I'm doing my best to make sure that he comes back for another season.
Whole lot of Niner Empire in the comments section. Daniel, Ahmad, Steve, they all want Robinson to join the San Francisco 49ers. We'll see if it comes to fruition. He's at number 8 in our free agency rankings. Let's go to number 7 now, to the defensive front line, Sheldon Richardson. A lot of reports out there suggest he's headed back to the Jets.
Yeah, which would be interesting. They did cut Wilkerson, which would, if the Jets got back Sheldon Richardson, heck of a trade.
Oh, yeah.
You got a second-round pick and Jermaine Kearse, and you got the guy back. That is Yankees and Aroldis Chapman-esque.
So the Seahawks lose.
Yeah, the Seahawks in this scenario are the Cincinnati Reds.
Okay.
Because they got way less than they traded originally for Chapman. But anyway, back to Richardson. He hasn't put up the numbers necessarily that you like to see out of a defensive tackle. I think there's going to be interest there. I think the Raiders are a team that has been linked to him as well. If they want to make one big splash, if they miss on a cornerback, maybe it's a guy who can be a little bit more disruptive at defensive tackle. But Richardson, I think if the Seahawks don't get a guy like Suh, who we'll talk about later on in the show, I think the Jets make some sense as well. So I am very curious to see what ends up happening with Sheldon Richardson. The numbers aren't necessarily there, but I don't think that really is reflective of how much of an impact he's had in the past at defensive tackle, and more importantly, how NFL teams view him.
All right, Sheldon Richardson reportedly never wanted to leave New York, likes Todd Bowles a lot there. So he's at number 7 in our rankings. Let's go to number 6, Malcom Butler, perhaps the most coveted free agent cornerback out there. And he's been linked to many teams, including the Saints. We talked about that at the top of the show.
Yeah, and I don't know where Butler ends up. And it was a very strange scenario in reality to see what ended up happening with Malcom Butler, where he was benched. And I think in reality that kind of has tanked his earning potential on the free agent market. But I still think a team, be it the Saints, he's got a lot of interest from teams like the Colts. I think the Raiders have shown interest. The Jets could be an option as well. That was a report earlier a few weeks ago. Texans as well. I think all those teams have some level of interest. I am very curious to see what ends up happening with with Butler, because we know he's not going to be back in New England. Where does he end up? And more importantly, how much does he end up getting on the open market? And I think with maybe not the best outside cornerback class, maybe he gets a little bit more than we think he's going to end up getting. And I think there is a bit of a drop-off in terms of the 10th or number 5 beyond, but I think Butler's a very reliable cornerback, and if I had to pick one of them, I think I would end up picking Malcom Butler, despite the whole scenario where, he ended up getting benched and it may or may not have cost the Patriots a Super Bowl championship, or title, I should say.
Which free agent corner would you want to sign out there, ladies and gentlemen? Hit us with your respective reactions, a heart, a wow face, a laughing face, or a like for your particular player of interest. All right, so Malcom Butler checks in at number 6 in our rankings. If you're just tuning into the program, let us summarize for you our list so far. We got A.J. McCarron, Muhammad Wilkerson, Aaron Colvin, Dion Lewis, and Eric Reid, 25 through 21. 20 through 16, Weston Richburg, Carlos Hyde, Patrick Robinson, Starr Lotulelei, and Nate Solder.
Got that name down pat, can't
There
like
you
it.
go. Hey, appreciate it.
It's a tough one.
15 through 11, Sam Bradford, Dontari Poe, Justin Pugh, Teddy Bridgewater, Case Keenum, all 3 Vikings quarterbacks on that list. And then 10 through 6, Sammy Watkins, Tremaine Johnson, couple of Rams, Allen Robinson, Sheldon Richardson, and Malcom Butler at number 6. You are watching NFL Daily, presented by the Game Time app. Head on to chatsports.com/tickets and get this fantastic app where you can get up to 60% off all those last-minute sports tickets, concert tickets, and so much more. It's meant for the procrastinator out there.
Can confirm I am a procrastinator.
There you go.
Saves me money compared to going to the scalpers or planning ahead a little bit. But even if I do plan ahead, the Game Time app is still the way to go. You can find very cheap tickets on there, and the reviews, by the way, can speak for themselves. Almost 5 stars across the board. The highest-rated ticketing app out there.
Your team, no iPhone. I'm team iPhone, and you know what? We both can get the Game Time app. So that's the beauty of it. All right, let's get into the top 5 now of our free agents here. Jimmy Graham, tight end, linked to many teams, including a reunion with the Saints, or maybe back with the Packers. Not back with the Packers, but to the Packers.
Yeah, I think the Saints or the Seahawks would like to bring him back, but money's going to be an issue there. I will throw out the Houston Texans as well. There was a report linking the Bears to Jimmy Graham, which I don't know if I buy that necessarily. They could move to a 2 tight end system, but I think they want to have Adam Shaheen become that number 1 tight end. Of course, we saw the Bucs do it with Cameron Brate extending him and sticking with that 2 tight end plan there. I think 3 teams make the most sense, and it's the first 3. The Saints, a reunion with Jimmy Graham and Kobe Fleener in the process. The Houston Texans, who need a tight end and have plenty of cap space. And the Green Bay Packers, who, man, you put Aaron Rodgers and Jimmy Graham together, oh, man.
Sup, defense.
That's fun. That is unstoppable in the red zone. Hail Marys, every time. It just works. So I would love to see it happen. I don't know if it does happen, but keep an eye on Green Bay and Jimmy Graham. I think it does make some sense there in terms of fit and potentially on the money side if Green Bay does want to throw money at one notable free agent this offseason.
Jimmy Graham is there at number 5. Let's go to number 4 now. A guy I could talk about till the sun goes down. Andrew Norwell, guard of the Carolina Panthers, graded as the 3rd-ranked guard according to Pro Football Focus, and he's just 26 years old. Guy's a fantastic player.
So you got a first-team All-Pro,
Yep.
super young, and is coming off of a really, really good year.
He's going to get paid.
Okay, so new highest-paid guard in the NFL, right?
Yep.
Like, that's what I figure is going to happen with Andrew Norwell. Now, maybe it doesn't last. Maybe a guy like Zach Martin for the Cowboys gets extended after he signs, and maybe that's what Martin wants to wait for, see what Norwell gets to set the market a little bit. 3 teams to monitor here. The New York Giants have long been considered the favorites in terms of long being combine and other reports because there is tampering that goes on behind the scenes because that's just the reality of the NFL. The Niners, though, want to make a push, as you've mentioned on various 49ers report shows, Cam. And then the Cardinals as well, trying to make a push, but I think they're very much a lesser fit there. I think you'll see them end up with the Giants, but the Niners will do what they can to land Norwell in the end.
This guy did not allow a sack last year or a quarterback hurry. He is one of the best pass protectors in the league.
A lot of Niners comments in there, and I'm not surprised.
Andrew Norwell is at number 4. Let's go to number 3 now. And he just made it onto the list because, well, there are reports that the Dolphins expect to cut him.
He's going to get cut.
So here's Ndamukong Suh.
So we're cheating and projecting.
We are.
So we're going against our own rules a little bit here by putting Suh in, but how could we not? Like if in reality, when Suh hits the open market, likely on Wednesday after free agency officially starts, it just makes so much sense for him to be one of the top guys out there. And he's not going to get, I don't think, the same contract he got last time, which was a record-breaking deal, but he's going to have a lot of interest. And a couple teams that I think make some sense as potential fits. Seattle Seahawks. He's from Portland. He's actually up there right now, by the way. He's currently in Seattle. Maybe he wants to go back and rejoin the Detroit Lions. Could be fun, right? They had never fully replaced him. He allegedly said at one point that he would play for free for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Where do you even fit him on that line?
You find a spot. Maybe you trade Timmy Jernigan and you have a
Lord.
Fletcher Cox, Ndamukong Suh front 4, which is absolutely terrifying.
That's scary.
Throw in Brandon Graham, Michael Bennett, and Derek Barnett. My God.
Jeez.
Absolutely terrifying. The Colts have a need for a guy like Suh. And if you're the Colts, you can get Ndamukong Suh, you draft Bradley Chubb, all of a sudden, just like that, your front 4 is actually really good. I think the Raiders as well had interest last time around. They could be a potential fit. I would like to see him go to the Colts. I think that would be the best fit in terms of money and scheme fit, but I'm not going to rule out Detroit or Seattle or a whole host of other teams. Of course, there are more than just 5.
We want you to predict for us, where will Ndamukong Suh sign? Seattle, Oakland, Lions, perhaps, or maybe even the Colts? Let us know in the reaction poll here on NFL Daily. Ndamukong Suh is on our list at number 3. Let's go to a couple of quarterbacks to kick things off here in the top 2. Kirk Cousins checking in as number 2, and he is essentially the white whale in this free agency hunt, unless we hear anything otherwise that Drew Brees is going to leave New Orleans.
He's the realistic white whale, I
Yeah.
guess, which just makes him a target. So with Kirk Cousins, he's not going to be back with the Redskins. They gave a lot of money to Alex Smith and traded for him. 4 teams make sense in the end for Kirk Cousins. It is the Arizona Cardinals, which we mentioned earlier on in the show, the Denver Broncos, who Von Miller really, really wants Kirk Cousins, the Minnesota Vikings, which I think is a really fun fit, and the New York Jets, who could give him potentially the most realistic money because the Browns are no longer in the mix there. I think he ends up in Minnesota, but I'm not going to rule out the Jets in particular. I think that Kirk Cousins will maybe take a little bit less money and say, you know what, it's okay. I'm going to go try and win instead and solidify my legacy or just win in general there instead. So I think he ends up in Minnesota, but I'm not going to rule out any of those other 4 teams that I just mentioned.
I think the Denver Broncos are really going to make a strong argument for Kirk Cousins to head over to the Mile High Stadium and play for Denver. Bill Musgrave, offensive coordinator out there, I think would be a nice pairing with Kirk Cousins, although Jeremy Bates in New York would do a nice job with Kirk as well, but there'd just be a bit of a more of a waiting game with the Jets rather than if you were to go to the Vikings or the Denver Broncos. So Kirk Cousins is there at number 2. Finally, that means Drew Brees is our number 1 free agent. And Tom, I am telling you right here, right now, I am certainly less confident now than I was 4 weeks ago about him returning to New Orleans.
It's kind of weird that we haven't seen any reports that, yeah, the Saints and Brees are close, and we're sitting here less than 48 hours. I still think Brees will be back in New Orleans. Even though Brees has all of the leverage in reality, the Saints will find a way to get Brees a contract and get it done and keep their still franchise quarterback in New Orleans. Maybe they draft someone finally that's not Garrett Grayson. But I will still be very surprised if Drew Brees isn't playing for the Saints next year. Now, maybe Minnesota has some quick discussions, tries to get something done quickly here if he does hit the open market. But I still think you'll see Drew Brees back in New Orleans. The city loves him. And by the way, he can still win there. Like, how close did the Saints come? They came a Marcus Williams play, a bad play, from making it further in the playoffs. So
Sure.
I think you'll see Drew Brees back in New Orleans. We'll mention the Vikings, but I would be really surprised if he's anywhere else. And frankly, if it does happen, Saints done messed up. Big time.
Drew Brees checks in as our #1 free agent for the 2018 off season. And let's summarize our full-on list here. 25 through 1 we go. A.J. McCarron, Muhammad Wilkerson, Aaron Colvin, Dion Lewis, and Eric Reid. Followed by 20 through 16 here, Weston Richburg, Carlos Hyde, Patrick Robinson, Starr Lotulelei, and Nate Solder. 15 through 11 here, Sam Bradford, Dontari Poe, Justin Pugh, Teddy Bridgewater, and Case Keenum, the trio, the trifecta of Vikings quarterbacks on that list. And then inside the top 10 we go, Sammy Watkins, Tremaine Johnson, Allen Robinson, Sheldon Richardson, and Malcom Butler. Finally, the top 5, Jimmy Graham, Andrew Norwell, and Ndamukong Suh, Kirk Cousins, and Drew Brees.
I look forward to all the YouTube commenters saying how our list has sucked. I love you guys.
Hey, we appreciate the support as always.